Hello, Namaste, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Cricket for Us. And today we're going to discuss India versus England, the fifth test of this 1 year long series, but also talk about Indian cricket in general. I've thankfully got a guest who is smart enough to talk about cricket. Got DJ from the Edges and Sledges podcast. You already know him. You already listened to him. How you doing, man?
I'm very well, Asja. Thanks for having me back, dude, and thanks for the great introduction.
Of course, it's I know how knowledgeable you are. We did a quiz together. I got kicked out in round one. You went to the final. I don't know what happened at the end, but I know you got to the final. So it bodes well for you. It bodes well. Right. In terms of I'm going to start off with the India England Test match because that's coming up in a couple of days. Um, what are your thoughts? How do you feel as an India supporter? How do you feel about this test? Because there have been changes aplenty, especially on the England side, with management, with captain, with coach, with the mindset, the approach, the way that they're going about doing things. It seems as though it's a brand new team, even though there's only like two or three personnel changes. But it seems like a pretty standard, new, positive thinking kind of side. What are your thoughts as an Indian supporter here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's a single test match, but it's meant to be part of a series. Now, series tend to have narrative. Series tend to have like you remember the test match series in Australia when India won there. That there was drama, there was narrative. India lost the first test. India then bounced back, won at Melbourne, drew at Sydney, and then famously won at the Gabba. But that's building narrative,
Yeah,
building drama. That had built up to be one of the most epic ends to a series
yeah,
in recent memory, and it was a few months after the Gabba victory, right? And we were looking at we'd seen the Lords win, we'd seen the Oval win for India after 50 years. So the Cricinfo article, I think, puts it best. I was reading it actually this evening. I don't know who the writer is, but he puts it best, saying that series didn't get the test match it deserved,
yeah.
and this test match isn't getting the series that it deserved.
Ah, I love
It's
that.
very poetic. It's very
Yeah.
poetic. It's a little bit of shairi.
No, I appreciate that because genuinely that is how it seems because this match seems out of place. And there were talks about, last year when the match was called off, maybe they could have pushed it a week, maybe something else could have happened. But due to, the pandemic on the rise, especially in the UK back then, maybe it was the right call. And I know it's really long removed. It's almost 10 months. But was there any other choice? Do you think there was another potential option?
You've been very diplomatic because the reason that it didn't take place a week or two later was because IPL 2021 was continuing in the UAE, man. That is the harsh reality. That's money talks. And um, yeah, there was no space left in the calendar. IPL 2021 had found its September window in the UAE. There was no way that India was going to not play that. The India players weren't going to play that. And straight after that was the World Cup in the UAE again. So
That's true.
there was no window other than 10 months down the line. And there was no forfeiture. There was no abandonment. That was the other discussion as to what happens in
Mm,
if this game isn't played. And
yeah.
it was abandoned. You remember it was abandoned on the morning of the test match. There were
Yes. Yeah.
people that had traveled there. The crowds had come back. I went to watch the game at Lords as well as the
Yeah.
Oval, so things had
Mhm.
opened up in England. So yeah, it's just a weird feeling, and I think the big theme is change. It's Indian fans would have felt good after that win at the Oval, thinking that okay, we're going to get our hands on the Patodi Trophy after 2007, where Rahul Dravid, incidentally, who's the coach now, was the one that lifted it.
Mhm.
Um, but momentum has changed completely. India's got a different test captain. The vice captain is no longer in the squad. The highest wicket taker of this test series for England, Ollie Robinson, he isn't playing. It's Siraj has lost form. Um, Cheteshwar Pujara has been dropped and brought back in. Uh, all things. Well, I mean, of course, Virat Kohli still hasn't scored his 71st 100, so at least
Yeah.
some things have stayed the same. But it's Joe Root continues to churn out runs
Yeah.
by the millions. Johnny Bairstow has learned how to bat in Test match cricket,
Yeah.
and the big difference, Ben Stokes didn't play that series.
Yeah.
That was a huge, huge loss for England.
Yeah.
And he's going to be playing here. Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad have both been dropped and brought back again. It's weird. It's just strange. And the unfortunate thing is that we're continuing a series which, honestly, if we'd had a standalone, if we'd had three test matches,
Hmm.
that would have given this context, right? Like,
Yeah.
if India lose one test match, you're like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. If England lose one test match, you're like, okay, 3-1. But it's not the same feeling as a series. There's a reason why it's called a series. It's a series of test matches that come one after the other.
Yeah.
Whereas this has been broken. India have played South Africa. India have played New Zealand at home. Ajaz Patel has taken 10 wickets in a test match. All sorts of stuff has happened since.
Mhm.
Anyway, sorry for the rant.
No, no, that's fine. I appreciate you not being as diplomatic because I'm the host. I need to be slightly diplomatic, so I appreciate you coming out with the truth. So if we look at this just as a test match, I know it is part of the series, and England are probably going to retain. That's what, at least that's what they're looking at, and India's trying to get the trophy back after 15 years. How do you see this match going? In terms of the two sides. So for India, you already mentioned that Pujara has been dropped and come back because of a fantastic county season in the UK. You've got players like KL Rahul not in the side. You've got Mayank Agarwal coming back in because KL Rahul is injured, and Rohit Sharma, the captain, is positive, or is he? Isn't he? That's all under discussion as well. So what's going to happen? It's crazy. It's madness. But from an Indian perspective, how do you see this match panning out for the Indian team, based on the side they can potentially select?
Another good question. I mean, I think the Rohit Sharma, if he doesn't play, is a big loss for this team. He was looking great last year. He scored runs in England. He got his first ever overseas Test 100 at the
Yeah.
Oval Test match last year,
Mhm.
127.
Yeah.
Um, and he's a good slip catcher, and he's a. I would have liked to see him captaining in an away Test match. He hasn't done that as yet. So it's a big loss. That said, Mayank Agarwal has been flown over. He's played a lot of cricket. There are questions about him against the moving ball. I mean, he's a hard worker. I'm a big Mayank fan. I know the one thing that he won't shy away from is hard work, and he would have put the work in that he needed to put in because. And Shubman Gill will be the other opener. I think Gill is the confirmed opener. Last year, if you remember, Gill had got injured
Yeah.
after the World Test Championship final, and he left England. So,
Yeah.
and KL Rahul came in and scored a ton of runs. And I mean, India are blessed with the talent to be able to replace someone of the class of Gill with a Rahul, and Rahul gets runs, and then Rahul goes out, and then Gill comes back in, and it's. I mean, it wasn't always the case. I would say,
Mhm.
for many years we had some pretty tricky opening situations and fast bowling situations, but
Yeah.
we're lucky now, and that's the other point. New Zealand World Test Championship winners last time, fine, but they were blown away by England 3-0. They were
Yeah.
beaten by Bangladesh at home.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bangladesh beat New Zealand at home. They didn't have Kyle Jamieson, who's their big player. The West Indies have just beaten Bangladesh, who beat New Zealand at home. So this is, I mean, uh, New Zealand aren't at their strongest. I think Kane
Yeah.
Williamson hasn't been scoring a ton of runs. They've been affected by COVID as well, of course. So r- Indian fans will be hoping that England are reading a lot more into this New Zealand win than they should. And let's remember, the Indian bowlers may not have the swing and seam of Bolt and Saudi, but they're just that little bit quicker.
Yeah.
And they were playing Johnny Best or stumps for fun last year, and the
Yeah.
tour before that, he would get bowled just like randomly.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that extra pace is going to help, and I think that's the edge that the Indian bowlers have. They've got Ravichandran Ashwin and they've got Jadeja. I don't know whether Ashwin will play, but if you think about it,
Mhm.
maybe the Rohit Dravid era isn't one of pure pace and aggression, and we're going to go for your jugular vein, and we're not going to take a step back, and we're going to basically put our foot on your throat and never let go. which was, I mean, let's be real. That
Yeah,
was the naked aggression Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri era. There was no
yeah,
stepping back. There was one guy who wanted to start the fight, and the other guy was egging him on, right? Like that's what it was. It was great. It was
yeah.
great. We enjoyed watching it as fans. We may have been shocked when it started, but when like you started winning in Australia, you're like, okay, cool, this works. You, you win at Lords where Virat Kohli is spraying deodorant on the Lords balcony. Like the whole team is out there yelling. Bumrah's bouncing Jimmy Anderson. Shami scores a 50 at Lords. I mean, it was crazy. But coming back to the point I was originally making, Ashwin and Jadeja, if they both play together, India could have two all rounders. You could still play Shardul Thakur and you could play Shami and Bumrah because there is a question about that third seamer.
Mhm.
Whether it's going to be Siraj, whether it's going to be Prasidh Krishna, whether it's going to be Umesh Yadav. Umesh played well last time, but it has been a year. And Siraj has sort of faded away a little bit since last year. Didn't have a great IPL. And of course, IPL is not the right barometer or indicator for test form. But Siraj has been blowing a little bit cold. And I don't know whether this regime will place as much value on a character like Siraj because he gets under the opposition skin. He irritates them. He like riles up the crowd.
Yeah,
And he's a wholehearted performer. He's a good guy. Don't get me wrong.
yeah,
He's a very honest trier and he's a very good guy. But he is irritating. He'll talk to the batsman, and he's a villain for the other team, but he's a hero for the Indian team.
mm,
But I think India could quite, and I hadn't appreciated that Ashwin was fit and he had played in the Leicestershire warm up game or whatever
yeah,
the India
yeah,
Leicestershire game
yeah,
was,
yeah,
mixed teams.
yeah.
But that would give you a team where you've got Bumrah, Shami, I think top class bowlers. You've got Shardul.
And people who could score runs, even lower
Yeah.
down the order if required.
Yeah, yeah. Shardul, who's got the fastest 50 in England in the last Oval Test match. He'd be the backup seamer, and then you've got Ashwin, an attacking spinner who can bat. He's got five Test hundreds, and
Yeah,
Ravi Chandran Ashwin, who can, Ravi Jadeja, who can hold up an end and bat left-handed as well, provide that balance. Last year, India were burnt by the World Test Championship final, where they
mm,
played both these guys and they lost.
yeah.
And since then, Ashwin sat out every game. And so that was a huge debate. Should Ashwin sit out? And it would be pretty cruel to fly him all the way here to just like make him sit out. I mean, he's a class performer. It's probably one of his last few tours of England. And his record hasn't been great here. But I mean, what better time to fix that, right? Like Jack Leach has just taken a 10 for. So maybe tracks are going to help
Yeah.
spinners. I don't know.
I think there's a really important point you raised there because my question about the third pacer was going to be, do you see Prasidh Krishna playing? Because to me, he's a bit quicker. He's kind of doing the same thing Siraj was doing last year, but
Or
just
Ishant was doing previously. He's kind
yeah,
of the hit the deck, trying to
exactly.
control the run rate, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So is there a shout for just playing one of Jadeja or Ashwin and having Shardul at 8 and then Krishna, Shami, and Bumrah? Or do you see that is a bit too over aggressive, similar to what probably Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri would have done? And maybe this regime is not looking at that. Maybe they're thinking, oh, we do need potentially the two spinners. And I think Shardul makes complete sense playing in this final test match because he has done well in England since debuting in Australia. He has got the ability to swing the ball. He's got the ability to swing with the bat, right? And he's a pretty decent fielder. So a very important asset in that lower order for India. So I do understand where you're coming from. Do you see Prasidh Krishna though getting in?
So I would actually play either Umesh or Prasid ahead of Siraj, although I really
Hmm.
like Siraj. I
Hmm.
think he's just been a little bit too inconsistent, and in a batting lineup consisting of the Bairstows and the Stokes of the world who are just playing Test cricket like it's limited overs, right? Like
Yeah,
these guys will go for runs. And
yeah.
Prasid's got a little bit of extra height, got a little bit of extra bounce. He hits the deck a bit harder. So he would be my choice actually out of those three. Unless they think he's inexperienced and they want to play Umesh, who would make it ahead.
Thing is with India nowadays. Experience doesn't matter. They just bring in someone and he just starts to perform in international cricket, and that's a blessing that India's gotten at the moment. So that's very true. But I understand where you're coming from. I just have a question. This is kind of England related as well, because Johnny Bairstow is in such good nick, and it doesn't matter the attack that he was playing against. It was just the way he was playing, striking the ball at 120, averaging what was it 70 odd in the entire series. Do you see Rishabh Pant trying that approach? And secondly, do you see Rishabh Pant playing? Because KS Bharat did have a pretty good match against Leicestershire. I know it's just a joking question, but genuinely speaking, I expect Rishabh Pant to play. But do you expect him to go out guns blazing and trying the way that he used to play? But then he kind of just tapered down a little bit because even in his stats and everything's just tapering just a smidge. There's a lot of talk about Rishabh Pant and this and that, but I'm not gonna get into that side at the moment because that happened before the India tour to Australia, and then Rishabh Pant became the star in like 4 weeks or 6 weeks. There's no point getting into that side of the discussion. I just want to understand: do you think he will play the way that he used to play with the aggression and the attacking shots and all that stuff? Because he's seen Bairstow do the same thing and be successful against a pretty decent lineup. Yes, they weren't completely full strength, but they still had Bolt, they had Southey, they had Matt Henry, players who are pretty darn good. They had Wagner in the final game as well. So, any thoughts on that?
So I'm not sure whether Rishabh Pant is looking at England and say, "I want to play like them." I think England have probably taken a book out of a leaf out of the Rishabh Pant book because he's the one who started reverse sweeping Jimmy Anderson, if you remember correctly.
And now Joe Root's
Um,
doing it.
and now Joe Root's sweeping Neil Wagner. But I mean, Rishabh Pant, I think he pretty much knows one way to play. He's a super successful. He's the most successful Indian wicketkeeper batsman in history
Yes.
when it
Yeah.
comes to Test cricket.
Hmm.
I think again we tend to conflate formats, right? Like so we did that with Siraj just now, saying he didn't have a great IPL, so maybe he's not going to bowl well in the Test matches. That is they're totally different formats. The ball's different, the lengths you bowl are different, the batsmen are playing different shots. And Pant hasn't had a great white ball season. He's been okay. It's been mediocre at best. But I was reading somewhere that his Test average at his age is second only to Sachin Tendulkar.
Wow. Okay.
Which is, I mean, it's a bit, maybe it's for Indian. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. But I was
But
reading that
still,
stat.
even in India, right? Even for India, being second only to Sachin Tendulkar, that's an
Yeah.
achievement in
And
itself,
you're a
right?
wicket keeper. And you're a
Yeah,
wicket keeper. You're
yeah.
not a pure batsman. That's not your main job.
Hmm.
He scored hundreds in England. He scored hundreds. He scored 100 in South Africa. He scored 100 in Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any question as to how he plays or two whether he plays. I think Bharat is an interesting one actually because there's some chat about bringing Bharat in at the top of the order
Hmm.
if Rohit is unwell and Rohit is unfit. Instead of flying Mayank, who would have had a couple of net sessions only, get Bharat in, who scored runs in both the warm up and looked pretty good actually.
Yeah.
And he bats in the top three, four
Hmm.
for his local side. So I don't know. You've got to also remember the series is on the line for India as well. They can't lose it, yes. So they'll the Patodi Trophy is not theirs though, and it'll be
Hmm.
shared and it'll be kept by England because I think it's the Anthony de Mello Trophy that is they'll be played for different trophies in India and
Yeah.
England. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
Patodi Trophy is the one that England have and have had for quite a while now.
15 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so India will be keen to fix that. Interesting to see who the captain is that lifts it. It maybe Virat and Bumrah or Virat and Rohit lift it jointly. I don't know, but I'm hoping that they get the chance to do that.
Yeah.
It's going to be 5 days of tough Test cricket coming up.
I think one thing you've resonated there, the big part of this entire series is that India can't lose, but they would like to still win the series. Even if it's a draw, even India, maybe this type of Indian team is like, we're happy with a draw as long as we win the series. But it
No, we've
doesn't.
got a
It
guy
does.
at number
Yeah.
4. He's not going to be happy with the draw. I, he's not. He may not be captain, but I can't see. Like Kohli's going to go for it no matter what.
Right.
And he's
And one
looking up
question
for it.
that's what I was going to ask you about Virat Kohli. Do you see the 71st ton? I know everyone asks this question before a match that
No
India has.
doubt. It's coming. It's coming. And I'm telling you, the last time he was in Edgbaston, there were similar questions around his form. Um, he averaged 13 and a half in England on that tour in 2014. He went away, worked on his game, and he produced 149 at
Yeah.
Edgbaston, which is one of the most. It was one of the best innings anyone has watched Virat Kohli play. It was. He put away his ego, played out Jimmy Anderson. Yes, there were a couple of chances, but you need luck to go your way. And he cashed in, scored 149, didn't look back that series. So, if there's a place that the revival could start, I think he'll have pretty good memories of Edgbaston personally, although India did lose that test match narrowly by like 30 odd runs, which was a bit annoying.
Annoying indeed, but I completely understand where you're coming from about uh, Virat Kohli not wanting to go for a potential draw, and I think that is the mindset I've seen India play with for a number of years now. So yeah, but most probably they're still gonna go for the win, and hopefully, from your perspective, India does win, take the trophy home, and Virat Kohli gets 100, Rishabh Pant gets 100. All the positives that you can think of. I just have one final question about this test match for you, DJ. Who's gonna win?
Mm. Everybody asked me this question. So I'll give you the answer that I've been giving everyone. I'm going to say England because, and I could reason it with cricketing reasons, but the real reason I'm saying England is because if England win, I can say I'm right. But if India win, I'm happy from the inside, so it's win-win for me, right?
I love that reasoning. I will use that reasoning all through my life now. So thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Thank you everyone for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Do check out the Edges and Sledges podcast, a podcast that is definitely must watch, especially if you're an Indian supporter and a Rishabh Pant supporter at that. Genuinely great content. Thank you so much again. And until next time, take care.